Guys, thank you all for joining. And we are really excited today to be forming a bit of a hot topic panel all around this new partnership with Decentraland and with Bondex and Web3 Career. And it really signals for me a partnership that looks to the future of where jobs are going, of how hiring is changing. And today we just want to kind of unpack a bit about, what it is that we're launching, why we're launching this, and what it means for you. And also kind of just really talking about the future of work as well. Really thinking a lot about, communities, the evolving nature of work. But before we kick off, let's just hear from who we're going to be speaking to today. So first and foremost, I'd love to introduce Kim. Kim, do you want to say hello and a quick introduction?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay, Paul?
Yeah, we can, loud and clear.
Perfect. So I'm Kim, head of marketing and partnerships over at Decentraland. I got my Web3 career kind of started back in 2021. So really excited to be here and talk about that evolution.
We've got Marina. I'm actually not sure, Marina. Is it Mary or Marina? I hear people calling you different things.
It's Marina, yeah. Yeah, Marina.
Great. Just a really quick introduction to Marina. That'd be great.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Marina. I'm partnerships manager with Decentraland. I'm actually super excited that this partnership.
Marina, so I'm hoping that everyone else heard you. Unfortunately, it chopped up for me. So if you're in a house, maybe move closer to the Wi-Fi. But if not, we'll see how this goes. Let's just hear from Sam there. Yeah, so Sam, just want a quick introduction, a quick hello.
Yeah, I've been at Bondex for just over a year now. Prior to that, I've had several companies in the higher tech and Web3 spaces, usually around getting people jobs, finding the best ways for people to work with big and small companies. So I spent a lot of time in this space and spent the better part of the last decade thinking about jobs and how to get people more of them.
Sam's not lying when he says that. He really has been trying to solve this problem for a long time. So really good to have you on here, Sam, especially giving your insights into kind of the future of work and what you've seen in the past. But I want to kind of kick off first and foremost with the announcement around Web3 Career, Bondex in Decentraland. And for those of you who may have missed it, Web3 Career now has its own world in Decentraland, very much thanks to the team, Kim and Marina. They're bringing this to life and part of their wider team as well. What this space allows is we'll be hosting monthly workshops there, really trying to help those who are inside Decentraland, the players of Decentraland, the users of Decentraland, actually help them take those next steps in their career and give them a bit of a finger on the pulse, what's happening in the market from those who are in the market every day, and which is us here at Bondex, and also we'll be bringing in partners and recruiters. And to make the space a bit more fun, during, when there's no workshop going on, you'll be able to go on and see the latest workshop that was happening. That's just kind of rolling now on like a loop, so you can go and see that. And you can also go claim a wearable. So we've got some cool trousers being made. And if you're lucky, you may be able to somehow claim a jacket. I'm not sure, but there is a jacket there waiting to be claimed and kind of have the full kind of Web3 career combo. And we've also got, I think I'll be saying, can correct me if I'm wrong, the first ever live job board inside a virtual world like Decentraland. Is that right? Are we the first ever?
Definitely inside Decentraland, and I believe everywhere, but for us, 100% a first.
Well, as a marketer, I'm just going to claim it. A global...
Go for it.
The very first live job board inside Decentraland. So you don't even have to leave Decentraland now to kind of browse and look at what opportunities might be a good fit for you. And for us, this is the beginning. We really believe that the way you find jobs in the future is going to be different, and the way you discover jobs will be different. We think that the future lies where there is a way that you get discovered, and you don't have to necessarily apply. And we think that on-chain world will actually really help contribute towards that. So yeah, we're really excited. I also just want to shill a workshop, which is going to be this Friday, the 23rd at 2:00 UTC. And to join that, you just want to join the Web3 Career community, which is in Decentraland, which is a great initiative. I think, Kim, I'd love to hear from you actually about your approach with Decentraland, with community. I know that in 2025, it was a really big initiative for you around setting up initiatives and the importance of them. I'll segue into how I feel this applies into jobs, but I'd love actually to hear from you in terms of why you kind of made this big strategic shift to Decentraland and making a really big push last year with the with the communities, and what your vision is for communities in Decentraland.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did launch a feature within the product that is called communities. So anyone that has a Decentraland name can build their own community there. And the reason we did that was honestly, communities were naturally forming here. So Decentraland, for anyone that's not familiar, is the best place to hang out online. And it's a space where people from across the globe, we have users over 100 countries logging in and doing things together. And what we found is they're all starting to kind of find their people within different types of interests. So people that love to party, that is a big community inside Decentraland. So they come in regularly. We saw there were artist communities coming in regularly. We had people coming in that were all participating in Shi-Fi, a learning community. So we started seeing that just naturally happen. And what we found is we wanted them to be able to find each other within the world. And so communities now, they can do live streams and walk the world without like losing each other, which is great. So they can talk and do voice chat through that. They also are able to have like their own chat, announcement boards, and everything within Decentraland. So for some communities, that meant they didn't need to have a separate Discord as well. For others, they have both, but it's really that chance for people to find one another around their interest groups, which is why I think it's so cool to have a like careers community now. So people that are all together looking for new opportunities or sharing their skill sets and opportunities and how that may be open to new doors for them. So having it be interest group has been a way that we think just allows you to find more of people like you.
And you guys, the thing that's incredible about Decentraland, you've been around so long, such a strong brand. Everyone knows Decentraland. And when we were just kind of prepping for the announcement, I got some of your latest stats, which was 3.9 million unique visitors across all your web assets and 270,000 unique wallets that have engaged with the platform. It's just so cool. And I feel like as we're seeing more and more people play with the metaverse, whether it's through all these virtual worlds, through VR headsets, or just through the mobile, or through just desktop. And I think people are really starting to get used to this idea of actually it's really cool to be able to explore and hang out with people in a different context, a different setting. And it's been super fun for me as someone who maybe a year ago hadn't been on Decentraland, so then actually playing with it and really getting to understand it. It's been really cool. But speaking of community, Sam, one of the things that we speak about a lot is this idea that when people are looking for talent, one of the first places they go to is the communities they're a part of. Is that the best place to find talent? What's been your insight as you've looked across your career?
Yeah, I think that's definitely been probably the best way to find people, right? The first place any company does when they're hiring is they ask their existing employees, hey, do you know anyone that does this? And those referrals are treated as, the highest priority to talk to and generally have the highest hit rate. And a community is almost just an extension of that. If you're a part of a community, you're a part of, that club, that crowd, and that enables that trust to be formed very quickly. I'm not going to recommend someone to a business or to hire if I don't think they're really great. And that communities have the same kind of approach there. That's what I've seen across my career. Like when I've been hiring engineers in particular, that's kind of my background. We had 1 or 2 engineers from a particular community. It was actually a physical place. And we ended up having 40 engineers in that area by the end of the year because we simply asked, hey, do you know someone that has this skill set or can do this project? And we just grew like that. We called it network effects. That's generally what people would refer to that to. So yeah, communities, wherever you can find them, join them, be active. If you're a job seeker or looking for your next opportunity, definitely be the best place to start.
Yeah, really good. Really agree. And then Marina, I don't know if you have any thoughts you want to kind of dive in on here, whether it's about the communities that is kind of springing up now a lot more with the new feature in Decentraland, or around how communities are actually helping people find work.
Yeah, actually, it's amazing to connect communities with like the career opportunity, because from my side, like people are not browsing job boards that much like anymore. They're like, of course they do, but they're still trying to show up in worlds, events, communities. Like they try to focus on combination of both, right? And so we brought Web3 careers to Decentraland, and it became like the natural meeting points for talents. And also what I'm observing is now that there is a shift from marketing jobs to discovering talent where they already are. So community is just the right place for it, I believe.
Or can you hear me good?
Loud and clear.
Okay. So I think the first time we tested this initially, you all were a part of when we did Career Quest earlier this year. Because what we saw naturally happening was that our community members were building kind of 3D resumes of sorts. Like I'm looking in our audience, I actually see Rustan, who's one of our builders here. I see Lovely from the community, and people are going out and they are showing their skill sets rather than just writing them on the resume. And I think that's what's so cool about the opportunity within virtual worlds is you could say, like, can you build something? It's like, let me show you. Here's the link. Come explore it in person with me. And that's an opportunity that I think is getting deeper and deeper with Web3 because you can prove who made it. There's some on-chain metrics here. So like our wearable creators, our emote creators are all publishing their work. They're talking through it. And it is allowing them to build that on-chain resume because it's tied to their wallet. And I think that's a really cool exploration of how creators can start to show off their work in a new way in this space.
Really cool. Do you have any kind of stories, Kim, of people who have maybe been in the Decentraland world and have been discovered for roles?
Oh, yeah. So we have a ton that actually do their job full time as different builders. So many of our community members have turned their work into becoming a studio. So they become a studio that can build for hire different scenes. So for example, the Bondex Web3 Career scene is beautiful and awesome. And we hired our community members to build that for you as part of this partnership. And so that's happening all the time. If you've seen in the world, there are a lot of beautiful scenes. We had our art week where we brought in the artists and then we paid studios to bring their art to life as builds. So even within our own ecosystem, we're seeing job opportunities start popping up. We actually just launched a bunch of different programs in 2025 for our community members to start earning. So we hired community leads, we hired welcome guides, we've hired builders. So that's our own ecosystem, but also outside of that ecosystem, we've seen community members get hired by brands to work on builds. Actually, one of my favorite stories is Doritos came to Decentraland for a Super Bowl activation a few years ago. And they hired some of our community members as content creators. They were like, okay, we have this really fun build in Decentraland, but we need Decentraland native people to show it off because you got to come in and film. You got to know how to claim a wearable. You need to know all of these things. So our community members were able to use their everyday playing and enjoying experience as an opportunity as well. So there's a wide range of jobs and roles to be had within Decentraland itself, but also they're transferable. So if you can learn Blender, you can learn coding, you can learn how to build in 3D, you can learn marketing. All of our community members are marketing their wearables, their emotes, their builds, their skill sets, their communities. Like they need to put an event page image together. They need to write the copy and the tweets to get people there. So it's like a wide range of skills that they can exemplify by doing.
I was there with the community meet on Thursday last week, and your guy was kind of walking through something he was building and creating. And he's like, yeah, I use Cursor to help me this. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And that barrier to entry for people to be able to create content in areas that would be really technically hard to, kind of start with originally is actually getting easier and easier with things like kind of vibe coding, which I'm a big fan of. I love kind of vibe coding, and it's the funnest thing. And most of my evenings I spend doing that now. But you kind of touched on something there, which is, people are building these kind of on-chain resumes or on-chain portfolios. And, for Bondex, one of the things I know is we really believe that the future of work needs to be trusted. And the thing that we love about blockchain is it creates this irrefutable record of, hey, this is who I am and this is the work that I've done. And we see a really big problem with, traditional CVs and PDFs don't capture this information. They don't capture, hey, like, look at this world that I've created. Look at these characters that I've built. And we think there's a much better way. And so that's really what we're building. And maybe a great moment to kind of bring you in here, Sam, around how do you see the future of like on-chain reputation and your kind of on-chain portfolio?
Yeah, definitely. I think that one of the biggest changes here is you kind of mentioned it at the start with vibe coding, but AI makes it really difficult to know what's real. It used to just be, you'd look, like having built companies that hired thousands of developers every year for various projects, you got pretty good at spotting who was lying or whose resume didn't quite match when you talked to them. And at worst, at that point, you've just wasted a little bit of time. But these days, AI allows everyone to have the perfect resume and the perfect view, and it makes it very difficult to tell. And that's where that trust piece comes in. And we talk about, when we reflect back on what we said earlier, which was, referrals and communities are the best place to find people. It's because the trust is already there. Like if you're in the community building one of the worlds or building wearables or something like that, you've already seen what someone's done. Like it's physical, or digital, you've seen it, it's in your hands, you're able to tell. But for other jobs and other roles, it's much harder. If you're looking for a designer, it's quite easy. You ask for their portfolio, you have a look through it, you can ask questions about it. But for a marketer, for example, Paul, it's quite difficult to tell the difference between what someone's really done and what they're saying they've. And with that, I think that's where AI makes it really hard to understand what's real and what's not. And it's only going to accelerate. We've already seen it accelerate over the past 2 years. But it's not that AI is bad. I'm a huge fan of the technology. It's more that at the application level, it needs to be met in the middle. Like there's a piece where real people with real talent who are doing real work need to be able to show through. And that's what we're really focused on. We're not focused on removing AI. We're actually focused on giving people, both on the hiring side and the candidate side, the ability to leverage it in the best way and be able to shine through that noise, if that makes sense, right? You want to be the signal through the noise, not caught up in the crowd.
Yeah, it's really true. I think even as Kim was describing there around Doritos coming in, having a look and saying, okay, like how do we find great content creators? Well, they have to go in a rather untraditional approach. It's not like they went to LinkedIn, ran an ad or ran something and then 1,000 creators applied. They kind of approached it in a very different way, and maybe could argue a much more trusted way. And I think as we've definitely thought about this, we've definitely really come to this conclusion of the system itself is kind of broken when it comes to hiring. There's a lot of people claiming to do things, but if you create a world in Decentraland and that is assigned to you and your character, that is 100% you. There is no faking that whatsoever. But if I write on a piece of paper, hey, or on a PDF, I've made this incredible world, it's very hard to actually prove that. And now, like you said, AI lets anyone generate a perfect CV in seconds. It can write the perfect cover letter. It can help you coach through the interview. It can fake your portfolio and inflate credentials. And I think it's really this moment where those traditional hiring signals are kind of getting flooded with noise. And so brands are now looking to say, actually, how do we find talent in new ways? How do we kind of try and find some different signal? Because our main Route 1 path right now is definitely flooded with noise. If you put up a job post, you're going to get thousands of people applying now, and they're all going to look perfect. And I think it's going to take either it's going to take the hiring manager taking a very unprecedented approach to finding the next role, which is actually, let me just go look at these communities. Or it's going to take a total rethink of the system and what it looks like to show up with a trusted profile, which, segue, is what Bondex is definitely trying to build. A profile you can trust, where you can verify who you are, what you've done, where you've worked. Yeah. And Kim, you've got your hand up. I would love to hear from you.
Oh, I believe that was up from earlier, but that's okay. Yeah, I think it's also just a way to make it a lot more fun. I think that's something we say in Decentraland is Web3 tends to be super technical in so many ways. And it is. It's super technical and innovative, but it's also a lot of fun. And when you're talking about resumes and jobs, you need a fun way to kind of stand out. And I think being able to showcase your work in a 3D environment or talk about that experience and have screenshots showing like you do things on chain and that you have that knowledge just brings that element of fun that might help you stand out from another applicant.
I've not even thought about that, but I'm a big believer in, there's a great TED Talk by John Cleese where he spoke about the power of play and bringing that into all aspects of your work. And I never actually thought about, that idea of, well, what if that job search also becomes like a playful part of your world, which is, okay, yeah, let me just go hang out with some others who are actually going on that same journey. Let me go listen to some workshops in the Decentraland.
But also, like,
really cool.
One thing you could do, like I know some resumes, they talk about, should you put your picture on it or not? And does that introduce bias and all of those things? But like, what if you used an avatar to represent yourself in that way? Would that help or hurt depending on the company? So just thinking about the whole process of like, you can explore together, you can listen, you can learn together with other job hunters, but like, is there ways to inject, like, I actually get this space?
Go for it, Sam.
I was just going to say that one of the things that you've really seen as a big trend, and I think it's a massive positive thing, is that people are bringing their whole selves to work, in terms of like you bring your personality, like if you're into gaming or something like that to work, right? And people talk about it. And I think that's reflected in hiring. Like, I mean, I was really early to this, maybe 8-9 years ago. I hired a guy to be a project manager who was a World of Warcraft clan, like guild leader, because I played World of Warcraft, played a lot of video games, especially when I was younger, and I knew what it took to manage 20 people, getting them all together to do a raid or whatever it might be. And that's something that hasn't ever been reflected. It wasn't on his resume for sure. It just came up in conversation. But if it had been on his resume, he would have gotten through much quicker. He would have been like my 10th interview, probably one of my first. And that's something that I think where we're looking for, what people are doing, their side hobbies, side hustles, right? That's a big trend right now. Like we've all got little projects we work on, little fun things we do. How to reflect that, and the static resume doesn't really work for that, right? It's quite difficult to explain, especially if it's something obscure or not there. And them showing up in those communities and showing up in different ways, like when you're looking for a job or even hiring, you're always looking for who stands out, like who's really passionate, who's really interested. And you might not be passionate about the exact work that they're doing, but passionate about something. And it shows you that they've got some thoughts in their head, some critical thinking of, hey, I really enjoy this. I want to make sure it happens. That's what I'm always looking for when I'm hiring people.
Really good, Sam. I love every time we talk, there's on video calls, there's always something geeky and nerdy in your background, whether it's some Lego set or some Star Wars, I don't know, some AI server that you've got as a bit of a side project that you're playing with, that isn't reflected on a hobbies and interests section on a piece of paper. And I think that people are looking for people to show up as their authentic selves, to show up and say, hey, like I may love marketing, but I'm also an avid, Minecraft nerd, or I'm really deep in Decentraland, and you look at all these worlds I've created and avatars and wearables that I've got. Super cool. Marina, I don't want to hog the mic. I just would love to kind of hear from yourself in terms of showing up as your authentic self and actually using that as your strength when you're kind of looking for your next role and looking for work. Have you got any kind of thoughts on that? Marina may not have thoughts, but she definitely has either a delay going on there. So I'll happily keep going.
Paul, can I add?
Yeah, please.
I was just going to say, I haven't added anything yet as a hiring manager, but I do hire a lot for our team. And so I think that point you said, Sam, around finding a way to bring your whole self into your resume is super interesting. So for us, like, if you haven't worked in gaming, but you know a lot about gaming, like that brings you to the top of our pile as well, because we are a game adjacent industry. We don't consider Decentraland a game itself, but a lot of gameplay, core game loops, and game experiences happening inside. So I do think that idea of finding a way to add an interests and hobbies, like if you're a vibe coder, we love vibe coders. We just had a vibe coder hackathon. We want to know you're playing with AI, you're building, you're thinking on the edge of technology. So I've always put at the bottom of my resumes like a hobbies or special interests small section. And I think it's becoming more and more important to show off those side hustles, those side skills that you're building. I even put silly things like, hey, I played college volleyball, because in my mind, that shows like leadership, teamwork, skill building, persistence. And so think about all of the things that you work on. Maybe you're a CrossFitter, which shows like you could push through hard stuff. So it depends. Just think through the lens of your hobbies and your side interests and how that might come across to a hiring manager, because I do pay attention to that stuff, because many of the people that come through are looking pretty the same. So just finding some way to stand out and show you're a whole human who can contribute a lot to this organization.
Absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree. I think Paul mentioned my backgrounds of having like nerdy stuff in the background. I used to use it as a filter to understand how technically or nerdy I could speak when I was either interviewing or even for sales. If someone noticed the Lord of the Rings poster that I had in the background, painted by a particular artist, I knew I could talk on a slightly deeper technical level usually than normal. So yeah, I use it as a great filter for people to understand that. Yeah, go on, Marina, you had your hand up.
Absolutely. I agree with what Kim said. Like I used to hire teams like from zero as well, like back in like 2 years ago. And I remember that I was receiving like tons of perfect PDF files. But after that, there was a tricky point when you have to understand where is the unique point of each candidate, right? And what I loved most is when candidates were brave brief enough, like to hide all the standard things like education and skills and everything, and just highlight something unique, like traction of what they've done, or like you mentioned, some sport assessments or anything that will be outstanding, not the same. And this was the first thing that we were actually picking and then diving deeper into the resume of the candidate.
I will say that to speak to the other side of this, which is I'm ever interviewing a candidate and I ask, hey, like, what's your interests or your hobbies or stuff you do outside? And they say nothing. Yeah, I'm actually more concerned about it. I find that much harder. I think like, okay, so you're not interested. Like the world is a great and interesting place with a billion things to do. And you haven't found one of them that you enjoy. I find that more concerning. So yeah, definitely always leaning on the side of showing off your interests, and it really sets you apart.
Sam, I wanted to piggyback on that. I don't know if anyone has ever read the book. It's called Range, and it's like how generalists thrive in a specialist world. It's fascinating. But one of the things that I learned in the book that I totally see true from my experience, I worked in beer, I worked in banking, I worked in, Web3, like a huge wide range of industries. But what they've said is all of your experiences allow you to connect dots that other people may miss. And I think that's so true with your hobbies, your side hustles, all of that. Like, I want people that are tinkering on the side and they are thinking outside of our world all the time. Like, you need time to think, and that might spark an idea for work, but it'll have you think about it in a totally different lens. And so if you're only thinking about work all the time and you don't have that wider breadth, inspiration, and creativity, it tends to not lead to the most innovative options and solutions that could come to play. So I read like a wide range of books. I try to go to a variety of different events because you never know where it'll spark a new idea for something you're working on. And I think that ability to be multifaceted is really important. So if you haven't read the book Range, I highly recommend it. It's amazing.
I've literally just added it to my Audible list because I'm that person, Kim. I don't read per se. I listen when I walk, but I still say that I read books. But maybe
it's much faster. My pile on my nightstand is too high. I totally get it.
Yeah. But my wife, she loves reading. She loves a real book and all the rest. But just to keep going on that thread, like there's something that I think we all intrinsically want as humans, and it is to work with interesting people and on an interesting problem. And I think like when you're speaking with someone, you realize, this person is very limited in terms of they don't bring a life force to them. I'm not sure whether you can put that on a CV or even capture that on chain or whatever, but I feel like that is something that we're all striving for. We don't want to be hanging around kind of like just people who we call them Debbie Downers in the UK. Not sure what they're called globally, but that's the term we use because we want to be working alongside interesting people. One of the trends that we've been discussing a lot, Web3 Career, is this trend of remote work actually going down. And one of the hypotheses that we've got around that is that one of the reasons is when you're starting a business now, yes, you can start remote first and, with the quote unquote hire the best from around the world, wherever they live. But there is also something about actually, I do want to work with real people. We're a remote first company at Bondex. I know Decentraland, you guys are remote first as well. But I'm sure like those moments where you get together, you still want to be with interesting people and actually having something wider than just work to kind of talk around, because that is, it's definitely what matters, is to be able to have a life which you really enjoy, working on projects that are really interesting alongside really interesting people. But let me just change tact a little. I want to talk about, we've got 10 minutes left here. I really want to talk about reputation and around this idea of, what does it take for someone to be highly reputable within Decentraland? I'd love to explore that. And then Sam, I'd love you to kind of just jump on and maybe talk around your take on reputation within the workplace as well, and whether the two are kind of interchangeable, in terms of Kim shares or Marina shares around reputation within Decentraland and kind of how we see reputation from a work perspective. So Kim, if you could kick us off first in terms of, how does kind of reputation work within Decentraland? What does that look like? Is there such thing as that person has a reputation, or how does that work with Decentraland?
Yeah. So in World, we have two ways it kind of comes to life. One is we have a badge system, which is attached to your profile. So if you've deployed a certain number of scenes, if you've attended a certain number of events. I can click on any person and see their badges and how far they've claimed, kind of like in-world gaming. You're trying to earn different levels, I would say. That's how the badge system works. So I can always click on and be like, oh, okay, this person is a reputable builder. They've deployed a bunch of different scenes. I can go check them out. Or this person shows up to a lot of events. That's awesome. They're probably an active community member. Or this person's a big collector. I can tell that they have a lot of wearables or emotes on their plate. So we can use that. Both parts of it are on chain, parts of it are off chain. But as a holistic profile, it gives us a good snapshot. But then also just once you're in a space, and I'm sure you've all seen this in the social circles you're in, like you don't even need to look. You could just talk to some people and know. And I think how you show up in the world follows you, even if it's not tracked. And so I could say, I see a lot of our community members here. Like M has an amazing reputation for like the fashion she shows up in. Toxic does really amazing like community events and videos. Rustan does amazing builds and different wearables because he's a creative builder. So like we immediately can go through and just know from experiencing people how they show up in the world. And that reputation is a little bit of that word of mouth style. I see Miss Jo Adore, like she was active in our SheFi community and we ended up bringing her in as our SheFi community lead. So her reputation and what we saw her showing up as led to an opportunity. And so I think it's really important to think, I know a lot of marketers talk about like your personal brand, quote unquote. It's literally just how do you show up in the world and do people say like positive things about the way you work and the way you exist? And that doesn't mean they always are like hyping you up in a way that's not true. I like to consider myself like the ultimate hype girl for Decentraland and the people around me in my circle. But I think it's they're honest, they're true, and they will tell you exactly how these people show up. And it's a huge part of hiring. It's that network that you have and how someone will talk about you when you're not in the room.
I just want to jump on that as well in terms of what your thoughts are as you hear that from Kim.
Yeah, so I think like it's really interesting, some of the stuff you said there, Kim, like especially around how you show up and how loud other people talk about you. And I think that speaks back to that referral piece, right? That's the first area that people really go to. I think for us, we see reputation as like a new currency, if you will. Like I think at one point in time, at least when I was growing up, degrees were your reputation. Like, did you get a degree? Did you go to undergrad? Or, depending on where you are in the world. And I think the thing that happened was, once everyone has a degree, it's the same as no one having a degree. And that's definitely the place we're in now. It doesn't make you stand out. In fact, it just gets you to the middle bar, like in terms of there. However, you find, I don't know if anyone else has had this, but the best engineers in particular, developers I've worked with, generally had never been to school. They're self-taught, they're self-motivated, they build it themselves. And I think that that's been a big change, as well as, job titles and then who you know, as well as has been a part of that. And also part of this currency is, it would be what you might want to call conspicuous reputation, which is, you show up in a Ferrari, so people think that you have great reputation because you're in a Ferrari. However, they don't know you might have stolen it down the street and no one would know the better until, police might come find you later. And from there, I think from there is where we really want to build that protocol that quantifies that. It quantifies that reputation across, the real verified proof that's not just, I worked for Google. It's I worked for Google, I did this, I was on this team, and maybe at Google at this particular time period when they were going through something really big. Use Google as a great example there. And that's the big difference. I think that's where like, the version 2 or 3 or whatever version we're on of, reputation as a currency. Now that's where it's really heading. Much more depth, much more nuance, and it's much more placed and balanced towards each individual person. And then when we talk about the bringing stuff that's not necessarily related to your job into it as well, I think that's just an added factor that helps, separate it out and adds another dimension to that reputation. And that's certainly what we're doing. Something that's hard to game and won't be necessarily in your face and doesn't necessarily reward who's the loudest, which is definitely what LinkedIn does at the moment. If you look at that, it's, are you louder? Then you must be better. As an introvert, can say that the loudest are not always the best.
That is so true. And even with, with people who do hang out in kind of virtual worlds like Decentraland, my hunch is typically then, from what I see of gaming streamers, they're not your typical extroverts who are like your social savants who will have the perfect tweet crafted every single morning and ready to go. But I feel like there's, to miler, which is like the secretly awesome, which are people who just turn up to work, do an unbelievable job, and yet their Twitter following is 5 people, or they may not even have a tweet, and they may be secret on Instagram and all the rest. But I feel like the world is full of secretly awesome people who aren't the loudest, but have an insane reputation. When you meet them, you're like, oh my gosh, like you are an absolute weapon. We need to get you hired. And I think that the current system, the way you have everything set up, it's really not made for those type of people. It's made for the loudest, those who are, the biggest followings, all the rest. But I think when you're actually hiring a manager, like you described there, Kim, you're really looking for signals that aren't just how big is your following. It is, are you a really interesting person? And but finding those people are really hard, and the system doesn't make it easy. And now it's even harder, with AI and all the rest. But yeah, I'm going to end there. We've actually been chatting. That's gone way faster than it feels. I want to kind of remind everyone about the announcement, which is Web3 Career World is now live. It is in world. If you're on Decentraland right now and you happen to be listening to the spaces, go to web3career.dcl.eth and it will appear. You can go in straight away. But if you want to go there with friends, then let's do this on Friday, where we have got our very first workshop with co-founder of Bondex, Ignacio Palomera, and myself, going through how to get hired in Web3. There's a ton of best practices, a ton of optimizations that you can do right now and improve your chances of getting seen by a hiring manager for the role that you're applying for. And we're going to be sharing everything we've learned over our time with Bondex and Web3 Career, and helping you take those next steps in your career. So that's going to be this Friday. It's going to be I'll get the time right. It's going to be at 2 p.m. UTC. And to get there, you just want to go to the Web3 Career community and join our event, or go to Decentraland/events and you'll find us there. Kim, Marina, Sam, is there anything else that you guys want to share before we wrap this up?
I was just going to add thank you. I'm so excited to have this now be a monthly series in Decentraland, so we can continue to build upon it and see you guys there. I'm super pumped about Friday, so I plan to be in World. My name is Kimbo, so come say hi.
Super pumped about this. Looking forward to the rest of the sessions.
Awesome, guys. Well, this Friday is, like I say, how to find a role. The next one is actually going to be with Hype Partners, who I swear their whole team seems to be excellent on Twitter. They are like Twitter trained. So they'll be joining us. We've got the main guy, Rob from Hype, who will be joining us on a CV teardown. He heads up all their recruitment, and they're one of the biggest Web3 recruitment agencies right now. So really excited to be joined by them on the next workshop. And then we'll be revealing the following workshop after that as well. So guys, thank you all for joining. We are thrilled to be launching this. And if you're listening, please go check out the world, go join the event, and we will see you every month at the Web3 Career World, and hopefully helping you take those next steps in your career. Thank you, guys.